and welcome to another edition of Heal with the Real. Tonight's guest is Aprielle. She's a quantum channeler, a spiritual coach, content creator, and she found herself living in a women's refuge at the age of 21 after fleeing a domestic violent relationship. She started her journey of holistic healing whilst living in a refuge. She experienced psychosis and PTSD, which she now refers to as a psychic initiation. Aprielle decided that medication wasn't the path she wanted to go down and searched for an alternative method of healing, such as hypnosis, reiki, and meditation. Aprielle is now passionate to empower people to embody their true selves through inner work, energy healing, and creative expression. So, Aprielle, thank you so much for being my guest on tonight's podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you've come on, because it's so important, isn't it, that we share our stories, and you got in touch and wanted to share your story. So yeah, do you want to say a little bit about, and I know I did a big background story there, but if you want to say a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, so, you know, I never really intended for my life to pan out the way it did, but I feel like you just have to keep following your intuition, following your heart, even in the midst of the chaos. It's in those moments where that's your real pivotal moments for change in your life, and they happen for a reason. And at the time, it doesn't feel like they happen for a reason. It can feel very messy and chaotic and destructive, but actually they are so transformative, and just keep riding the waves and you will get there eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree, because when you're actually in that moment, it's the hardest thing, and you think that your life will never get out of that moment,
Yeah.
of that darkness. But actually, when you do look back, you understand that actually, yeah, it did happen for a reason. That happened for me to really understand and go inward. So can we talk a little bit about your journey through that, if you don't mind? You know, the relationship that you found yourself in, how you got into refuge, and what, you know, the lead up to that.
Yeah, so it actually started in around 2020. I started an OnlyFans page. This is how it all began. So I started to do OnlyFans, and my parents very much disapproved of this. So this led me to homelessness. They actually kicked me out, and I was now left in a situation where I was completely vulnerable and didn't have any savings or anything like that, because I only just started the page and I wasn't making thousands of dollars on that. So I was sort of in this very vulnerable situation, and that's when abusers get you, is when you are in that very vulnerable situation. So I was sort of seeing this guy, and one thing led to another, and it just spiraled very, very quickly. Obviously, I didn't have anywhere to live, so I moved in with him, and we ended up getting a house together then a couple of months later on, and it just all spiraled very, very quickly. And I just thought I needed somewhere to live. That was my main goal, was just to get a roof over my head at the end of the day. And so that's what I did, but things obviously turned sour very, very quickly. As soon as we were in there, it was threats of physical abuse straight away. It was very, very quick. It was very intense. It was sort of like a fast track, because I know a lot of women are in abusive relationships for quite a long time. You know, more commonly, it's more, you know, a couple of years here and there, but mine was actually 6 months. So mine was a very, very quick, intense experience, which is actually quite rare. But things sort of lined up in a way that, so I had this friend, but she was a bit older than me, and I used to babysit her kids. And when things started to go sideways, I would call her up, and because she'd been through domestic violence herself, she basically said, I'm getting you out of there, and I'm getting you out of there now. And so things spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. And yeah, I ended up in a woman's refuge. If you want to know more details about that, obviously I'm happy to share. But yeah.
So it's really interesting that you said that that happened very, very quickly, because
Mhm.
he would obviously have known that you've no family,
Yeah,
that because what abusers tend to do is isolate you from
yeah.
your family, and that is part of the journey of
Well, that
abuse.
was the thing. So, like, that section had already been done for him, in a sense. He'd already had that bit taken away. But I did have some friends, but then he, strained those relationships as well with friends. So I also didn't drive as well. So we were out of the way. So there was no train stations nearby. So I was completely isolated. And then he started to financially control me, stop me from working. And yeah, I was like, I need to get out of this situation quickly. And I actually tried to flee prior to the big incident that happened. I tried to flee once prior to this. So obviously alarm bells were going off in my mind. But they sway you, they woo you, they charm you, and also again, that was my home, because that I'd just gone through this whole thing, and I was like, but that's where I live, that's my home now. So I went back, and then things just get worse, don't they? Every time you go back, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Sure. And I guess you were in fight response as well,
Yeah,
still, because you fled your home, you had
yeah,
nowhere to live, you're still fighting for, wherever you are, your home,
yeah,
and then you're up against also the
yeah.
abuser trying
And it
to
was
woo you back.
independence as well. Because, like, for me, I felt like I'm doing something with my life now. I'm independent. I can, do these things. Because even coming away from the family unit, that was also a toxic cycle in itself. So I moved away from that, and I was like, I can't go back to that either, because that's not healthy for me either. So, it was
Yeah.
like this push and pull. And I think a lot of women find themselves in that as well.
And it's interesting as well when you speak about your past childhood experiences, because a lot of people that are victims of domestic abuse go way back into their childhood and
Yeah.
have lots of traumas that they gather up along the way. And I know
Well,
for
that's
me,
the thing. Yeah. So
even actually my parents weren't, toxic. There were areas that I picked up along the way that I know that led to my
yeah,
unhealthy relationship. So that,
that's
I'm
it.
presuming it's the same for you.
Yeah, because your adult relationship is basically a manifestation of your childhood traumas. If you haven't dealt with your childhood traumas, that would play out in adult relationships. And that's what happened. It was a complete manifestation of the bundle of trauma that I was walking around as, that I'd experienced from childhood. So, my parents were physically and emotionally abusive in childhood as well. So when I stepped into that adult relationship, I believed that that was normal. I believed that, you know, I just saw so many similarities with my ex-partner, the abuser, and my father. Like, it just was felt in a way safe to me, because I knew what that felt like. I knew what abuse felt like. I knew what, you know.
Yeah. When you first moved into the home with your perpetrator, when did you first start to realize those red flags? What were the cracks that started to begin to show in the
Yeah.
beginning?
So we actually lived with his mum in the beginning, and the cracks were showing then. But again, I had nowhere to live. So, and you're also in this bubble of false love. So, you sort of got like blinders on, and you're not really seeing the person for who they truly are. And they also tell you we're bombarded of lies as well. So there's that on top of it, like gaslighting you the entire time. But it was when he started to be quite verbally abusive towards his mum, where I started to see cracks. and towards other female family members. But then as soon as we moved into the house, it was literally a week of living in that house, and he was threatening to hit me. So I was like, oh dear, I need to somehow figure this out, because this isn't going to end well, you know?
How did you, where was the first point of figuring that out? Because if there's somebody in that particular situation now that's listening to the podcast, where was that first point?
So I actually had police officers phoning me to try and warn me about this guy because of how high risk I was. But I would say, if you are in that situation, and I completely ignored the phone calls, of course, because I'd already been brainwashed by that point. No police, da 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 da.
Yeah.
You know, he'd already told me that he'd smashed ex-partners' phones up and things like this. So I'd already knew I had to tread very carefully in the things that, you know, the people who I was engaging with and the things I was talking about. And if it had to be done in private, or, you know, whatever. So I would say, you know, if that is your situation, if you can confide in a friend that you trust, do that, and don't be ashamed of that, because there are people who can help you and will get you to safety. And if you do need to go into a place of refuge, do it sooner rather than later. Don't wait until I did, because things escalated and things happened later on, whereas I could have been in a refuge by that point. So yeah, don't be ashamed if you need to flee, and don't worry about materialistic things either, because you can always rebuild. You can always build your material possessions back up. If you literally just walk into a refuge with the clothes you have on that day and you need to do that, then do that.
Yeah, so important. And there's a few red flags that you have gone over, you know, like abusing his family members,
Yeah.
slating off his ex-girlfriends,
Yeah.
telling you that he was smashing his ex-girlfriend's phones up. These are clear signs that this is an unhealthy person and a potential abuser. So these, you know, they're quite big signs to look out for, but there are smaller ones as well.
Yeah.
So what was your next step after that? So you've gone into a refuge, you'd got away.
Well, there was actually a whole section that happened. So my friend had come to pick me up after the first physical assault, which he was found guilty in court for. So after that had happened, my friend had taken me to hers. She had convinced me to make a statement about the physical assault, which I am glad that she did now. At the time, I didn't want to do it. Of course, you never do, because it's so scary and you don't want the police involved, and it's all these added things that go on that affect your mental health, right? And they do. But I'm glad that I did that now, because eventually that did put a restraining order in place. But during that time that I had fled and I was with my friend, he was stalking me. He was completely stalking me, harassing me, trying to contact me through fake accounts, fake account, fake account, fake account. And this went on for literally so long. And he eventually found out where I was. He stalked me and he found out where I was, and he came to the house, and my friend turned on me. What happened is she turned on me and thought that I had told him to come when I never did, and she kicked me out. So now I'd fled the abuser, but I was back with the abuser, and he had basically convinced me to get in the car with him. And the rest is honestly just, it feels like it was a complete dream, like a movie. Like, and I think probably a lot of women who experience domestic abuse will feel like this, that, you know, that was actually my life, that happened. But essentially what happened was I then went missing for 3 days with him. So he had taken me to a hotel in Cardiff, and yeah, he basically just tried to brainwash me so much to the point where I didn't care if I woke up alive or not that next day. Genuinely, I was like, at this point, you know, it's either going to go one way or the other, you know. My face had blown up on social media because obviously the police had put out a missing person post by this time. You literally, you couldn't have gone on a single act without seeing my face. I think it even made the radio and all things. But because obviously this guy was, you know, I was high risk. I was very high risk. And you know, there was sexual assault that happened in that time as well. And, you know, I'm not going to stop now because that happened for a reason. And I say this in the talks that I do, you know, women experience that and they don't come out of it alive. I came out of that alive. And for some reason, I've been blessed with this opportunity to now use my voice. So I'm not going to stop, and I will be a voice for women who are afraid to speak up, who are afraid to, you know, speak their truth. I will be that voice for those women, because this happens all across the world. This doesn't just happen in one country, in one area. You know, sexual assault and kidnap, this happens everywhere.
Sure. And one of the really poignant things that you said is after the getting away,
Yeah.
and the constant stalking.
Yeah.
That is one of the worst parts. For
Yeah.
me, I felt that was one of the worst parts, because
100%.
you can get away, and a lot of people think, oh, once you're away from or in a safe place or in refuge, then your journey's over. But actually, that's very much the beginning of that journey.
Your whole energetic space has been invaded. That's what's happened. Your whole space has been invaded, and it continues to be invaded energetically until you can break free from that and you can heal those patterns or those toxic cycles. And that takes a while. That doesn't happen overnight, you know. And it's actually in that after bit. So obviously after this, then that's when I went into refuge and I said, look, this has happened, I need somewhere to stay. And they took me in straight away. But it's in that part, I found that part in the refuge bit. Then afterwards was probably the worst part, because I had nobody that I knew, no counsellors, no therapists. We were also in a lockdown, so there was no pubs open, there was no restaurants open, there was nothing open. So there was nowhere that I could do, or I was literally put in this box room and forced to heal. That's what happened. And it was very intense. It was intense. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that it was easy, because it definitely wasn't. But it was one of the most transformative life experiences that I've ever had.
So talk me through that, because you're in this box and I guess your head's all over the place. Yeah. You have now starting your healing. You know there's no way out. You need to go in. What did you do?
So I think I started to journal, and I started to meditate, and yeah, I started to meditate quite a lot, and you know, listening to podcasts and reading books, and excuse me, I was really interested in the idea of learning about reiki. So I think I was already doing like self-healing on myself whilst I was there, because obviously, you know, my physical vessel had been through so much that I was like so frail at the time as well, because obviously I wasn't sleeping properly either. So I just had to rest a lot, read a lot of books, started to meditate, and I started to tap into my intuition. I started to receive guidance. I started to receive information about the next steps in my journey after refuge. And so I started to make vision boards and write things down, and I'd have big posters up on the wall. And yeah, looking back now, it was really beautiful.
Nice. It's funny that you say journaling was the beginning of your healing, because that was where I began, just starting gentle journaling every day and starting to look at the things that I am grateful for, because we still have our life, we still breathe in, we still can open our eyes and experience nature outdoors, and the small things that actually we always take for granted in life, and
Yeah.
actually really going back and looking at those small things. And I think gratitude is so important for
Oh,
me. And
absolutely.
yeah,
It made me so grateful. Like, I was living off food bank. I had no money, but I was so grateful for like that bag of food that they would give me. I was so grateful that they used to do like group walks. The what they called, the support workers would do group walks, and because obviously I was experiencing psychosis and PTSD, I didn't want to go out for a walk on my own all the time because I was too afraid. So, even just having a group walk, I was so grateful to have a group walk, and it's just those little things that you have to keep being grateful for every single day.
sure. And I mean, the journaling for me then ended up becoming my book, and writing my book, and that process was huge, because it made me go back. And I don't know if this was the same for you, but it made me go back right to childhood, like we discussed
Mhm.
earlier, and understand all the things that contributed to the traumas that brought me to where I was. And it
Yeah.
was so cathartic, because I could kind of empty or unpeel back all these layers in my
Mhm.
life and just put them to rest. So I don't know if that was the same for you.
For me, it was more self-hypnosis. So I journal a little bit, but my journaling is more manifestation journaling. So when I was journaling, I would be like, I'm gonna live in a house, da, 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 and it would be like manifestation journaling that way. But for me, unpacking the layers was when I started to put myself into self-hypnosis. So I started to, this was actually after when I'd left the refuge, I started to do this because I felt safe enough to, and obviously ready to start exploring a bit more about my soul experiences and other experiences that my soul is having in other dimensions or realities, let's call it. And so I started to do that. But what happened is I started to uncover layers of myself, information about my soul started to come through, and I started to piece together why certain traumas happened and things like that. So yeah.
And it's also, you mentioned meditation. That was one of the starting points for me, was a lot of self-love meditation, and
Yeah.
beginning to love myself again, because I think it's important when you've been through any traumatic relationships, you really don't love yourself.
Hmm.
And I don't mean it in an egotistical way. I mean self-love, of loving every inch of your
Hmm.
body.
Absolutely.
And that was a really important thing for me, was meditation. I still meditate every day.
It changes your
On
life.
Yeah,
Honestly, changes your life. I love meditation. I actually now also create meditations as well for people. So as part of my coaching services, I will create specifically coded meditations for them around the specific area that they need working on. And I also create free meditations on YouTube as well. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for meditation.
nice, nice. So let's go to, so we're in the refuge and
Mhm.
you're starting your healing journey. What happens next for you?
Okay, so this is quite transformative as well, because I didn't feel like I was getting the support that I needed whilst I was living in refuge. So, this is no disrespect to anyone, but I didn't feel like the level of support I needed was there. It didn't feel like my needs were being met in any way, shape, or form. And going through an experience like that, it will deepen your faith and trust in God. I'm not a religious person, but I am very spiritual, and God to me is God, source, creator, whatever you want to call it. It's an energy that we're co-creating with. And I prayed to God and I said, please remove anyone from my life who is doesn't have my best interests at heart. And I kid you not, literally, I got kicked out of the refuge within a couple of days. So, so what had happened was, you're not supposed to drink alcohol in refuge, okay? They have quite very strict rules. You're not supposed to drink alcohol, you have a curfew, there's loads of things that you're not allowed to do, right? Which is fine, you know, but it was Easter weekend and none of the support workers were in, and so there was nobody there. It was just me and the other girls who lived there at the time, and so we thought, well, we'll have a drink. Anyway, things happened and they found out that we were drinking, and literally within a few days I was kicked out. But I can't really blame anything because I'd asked for it, because I'd actually prayed to God, because I knew I wasn't being supported. I wanted out. I think I'd learned all of the lessons I needed to learn. So I've been there for around 3 months at this time, which is quite a while to be living in a refuge, right? Yeah. So and this is the thing, once you've learned your lessons in whatever space or capacity or area or in the relationship or whatever it is, once you've learned your lessons, the universe will eject you out. That's it. Once you're done, once you've learned the lessons, it's time to move on. And it doesn't matter how it happens, but you will be moved on. And that's what happened. So I was ready to be moved on. And yeah, I was thrown out. So yeah, so that happened. But after that, then I went to live in a hotel. So I lived in a hotel then for 2 months. And that was a whole nother experience in itself. Oh yeah, but yeah.
So you've lived in a hotel, and then where are you today? What's Aprielle today? And
Yeah.
what did you, because I know that you then went away and did lots of practicing and training. So
yeah,
Aprielle today.
Even though I was in those really like dusty situations, I was in that refuge. I was living in a hotel that was full of alcoholics, right? And people who've just come out of prison. I slept with a chair up against my door every single night. But even though I was in those situations, I knew I was protected. I knew that I was going to be safe. I knew that, even though, you know, my body wasn't telling me that at times, but I knew I was protected on a higher self level. I was meditating, and I thought, you know what, if I can meditate here when I'm full, surrounded by chaos, alcoholics, partying, all of that, I can meditate anywhere. And I proved to myself, and I said, if I can do this and I can get out of this situation, then this is just living testimony that you can transform your life and you can recreate, you know, new pathways, and you can change your life. So yeah, I continued with my manifestation. Like, I was so adamant that I was going to manifest my dream apartment. Basically, I was so adamant, and I had such a strong desire that was going to happen, that it happened. You know, nice. I just wouldn't give up on it. And even though, you know, people were telling me you're not going to be able to afford it, all these things, I was so adamant that this is my desire. This is, you know, something that I want to create, and this is something that I would be gifted because of my determination. My hard work is going to pay off.
And it's so true, you know, when you start manifesting the things that you want to create in life, you just start to notice slowly all these things appearing, and it's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it sounds very woo-woo to people that don't understand that, but actually it isn't. You know, when you start going on this path of, yeah, this is what I want, this is what I desire, not what you want, not what you want to create, they start appearing, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so magical when you can see the magic in it, even in those moments. Like, you know, I was still grateful. I was still grateful I had a bed. I was so grateful I had a bath and a shower. You know, I can remember when I didn't have a fridge at this time, so I would use the water in the bathtub to keep my food cold. You know, I don't forget those moments, but I was grateful that I even had that water to keep my milk cold or whatever, you know. So yeah, you really have to look at things as they are, you know, and just be grateful for wherever you are, and know that wherever you are in your journey, in this is exactly where you're supposed to be in this moment. And yeah.
Fab. So where are you now? What are you what are you doing today? Tell us a bit more about, because I know that you do some beautiful things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just sort of opened, well, I say sort of, it's still in the process, as everything is, you know, you have to just keep going with things. But I've opened a healing studio in the Good Sheds in Barry, and I'm going to be taking on clients doing spiritual coaching, Reiki, one-to-one meditation. I'm going to be doing meditation courses for people as well, and intuitive paint classes as well, because art therapy is so amazing, and I feel like it's been really therapeutic and helpful for my journey. And I basically have just combined all of my skills and everything I'm good at into a business, basically. And so whoever resonates with my energy, you know, if they feel called to work with me, then, you know, I'm available to help in any way that I can.
And it's good. It's great that you did that, because I think starting your own business, it's like, what do I do? Where do I begin? But looking at all your qualities that you have and then
Yeah.
putting it all into one bundle
Yeah.
is just incredible. Aprielle, I wish you so much success with
Thank
your
you.
business. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Have you got any last words before we close?
I would just say, don't give up on hope. Don't give up on your dreams, because they're little seeds that are being planted for a reason. And, you know, even when I was living in refuge, I was getting downloads of the life that I'm living now, which is like 4 years on, 3.5 years on. So trust those little seeds, trust those little whispers and those little nudges of guidance, because it will make sense eventually.
And keep putting one foot forward every day,
Don't
even
give up.
however small it is.
Yeah.
Keep putting one foot forward, and you will come out of the situation that you may have found yourself in. You've been an amazing guest, Aprielle. Thank you so much. Your name's beautiful. I absolutely love it.
Thank you so
And
much.
I do the podcast Heal with the Real because of my book, Fix Your Future. And in the back of there are lots of self-help techniques that you can use. And they were really helpful on my healing journey. So that's on Amazon if anybody wants to get it. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for having me.
I'm
Thank you
so
so much for this
grateful.
opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.